Black Penny Games, official distributor of Vampire the Eternal Struggle, sponsors this unboxing. Welcome Methuselahs. Today we're gonna do the unboxing of the new 5th edition decks that will be really soon available at your local store. Let's start with the Tzimisce clan. As you can notice, the first thing is that we don't have the typical plastic ceiling that covers the deck. This is because Black Chantry Productions has joined the zero plastic policy of the European Union. At the top we can find the logo of the Tzimisce clan, and at one of the sides we have the rights and distribution information for this product. At the other side we have the logos of Wall of Darkness and Black Chantry Productions. And at the bottom we can find the code, and it says that it's printed in European Union. The Tzimisce were once noble tyrants of Eastern Europe, but in modern nights they cover power worldwide. For them, control is all. They aim to take what you thought was yours, and then jealously guard their possessions like a dragon guards its hoard. This deck is versatile toolbox. Your vampires use mind-altering dominate powers to gain influence and undermine opponents. In combat, they can turn into bats or mist to escape or rework their bodies into monstrous forms to seriously rake their foes. For defense, you rely on animal spies and hideous ghoul servants. Opening the box, we find a paper seal that replaces the plastic one that we had before. No printing on it. And let's open it. Okay, let's start with the vampires. The first one is Adrino Manauara. Capacity 8, Anarch Baron of Manaus. Adrino gets 1 press, mandatory, each combat. Only is able to continue combat. Protean, Dominate, Animalism at superior, and Potence at inferior. We have 2 copies. Ángel Guerrero. Capacity 7, Anarch Baron of Ciudad Juárez. Protean, Dominate, and Animalism at superior. 2 copies. Branimira. Capacity 6, Anarch, Baron of Sofia. While you have 9 or fewer pull, Barrens gets +1 intercept. Animalism at superior, Protean, Presence and Dominate at inferior. 2 copies. Clara Hjortshøj. Anarch of capacity 5, Protean at superior, Dominate, Auspex and Animalism at inferior. Marialena. Anarch, if Marialena is blocked, she burns 1 blood before block resolution. Capacity 5, Protean and Dominate at superior and Animalism at inferior. Neserian. Capacity 6, Anarch, while you control no locations, Neserian gets -1 bleed. While you control 1 or more locations, Neserian gets +1 vote. Dominate and Animalism at superior and Protean and Celerity at inferior. Prentis Derby. Anarch of capacity 4, Protean, Dominate and Animalism at inferior. Susie Kano. It's an Anarch of capacity 3 with Dominate and Animalism at inferior. Whisper. Capacity 5, it's an Anarch with Dominate and Animalism at superior and Protean at inferior. The Anarch Free Press. It's a master that costs 1 pull. Unique. Requires a ready Anarch. Put this card in play. You can lock this card to give an Anarch you control +1 intercept. You can lock this card after an Anarch successfully hands to add 1 blood to that Anarch. Anarch Revolt. Another master. Put this card in play. A Methuselah not controlling a ready Anarch burns 1 pull during their unlock phase. Vampires can call a referendum to burn this card as a +1 stealth political action. Bite and Switch. It's a reaction. Requires a Baron. Only is able if a minion is bleeding you. After blocks are declined. Lock this reacting vampire. Change the target of the bleed to another Methuselah other than the active minion's controller. The Methuselah can attempt to block. 3 copies. The Barrens. It's a master unit location. You can lock this card to discard a card. Draw up afterward. Blood Doll. It's a master. Put this card on a vampire you control. During their master's phase, this vampire's controller can move one blood from this vampire to their pool, or from their pool to this vampire. 3 copies. Cat's Guidance. It's a reaction, with animalism. At inferior, only usable by a locked vampire who has blocked. After block resolution, unlock this vampire. At superior, +1 intercept. 4 copies. Child of the Revolution. It's an action that costs 1 blood. +1 stealth action. Requires a non-sterile Baron. Put this card in play. It becomes a 1 capacity non-unique Anarch vampire of the same clan as the active vampire, and must hand this turn. You can search your library, shuffle afterward, and hand or ash heap for a discipline master card and put it on this vampire. 2 copies. Constant Revolution. It's an action at +1 stealth. Requires an Anarch. Unique. Put this card in play with 1 counter. During your unlock phase, add 1 counter to this card. During each other Methuselah's unlock phase, that Methuselah burns X pool and or cards at random from their hand, where X is the number of counters on this card. Vampires can burn this card as a direct action that costs 1 pool. Deflection. It's a reaction that requires Dominate. It costs 1 blood. Only usable if a minion is bleeding you. After blocks are declined. At inferior, lock this reacting vampire. Change the target of the bleed to another Methuselah other than the acting minion's controller. That Methuselah can attempt to block. At superior, as above, but do not lock this vampire. 3 copies. Earth Control. It's an action modifier that requires Protean, and it costs 1 blood. At inferior, +1 stealth. At superior, +2 stealth. 3 copies. Foreshadowing Destruction. It's an action modifier that requires Dominate, only usable during a bleed action. At inferior, +1 bleed that is limited. At superior, +3 bleed if the target Methuselah has 9 or fewer pool. It's limited to. 3 copies. Form of Mist. It's a combat card that requires Protean. At inferior, it's a strike that does a dodge. At superior, as a strike, combat ends. After combat ends, if this vampire was blocked while performing an action, they can burn 1 blood to continue the action with +1 stealth as if unblocked, even if stealth is not yet needed. A vampire can play only 1 Form of Mist at superior each action. 3 copies. Form of the Bat. It requires Protean. At inferior, it's an action modifier, only usable if a minion attempts to block. The blocking minion gets -1 intercept. If this action is blocked, this vampire gets 1 optional maneuver and cannot use equipment during the resulting combat. At superior, as a reaction, +1 intercept. If this vampire blocks, they get 1 optional maneuver and cannot use equipment during the resolution combat. Govern the Aligned. It's an action that requires Dominate and costs 1 blood. At inferior, it's a direct bleed with +2 bleed. At superior, +1 stealth action. Add 3 blood to a younger vampire in your uncontrolled region. 6 copies. Haven Uncovered. It's a master. Put this card on a ready vampire. Minions can enter combat with this vampire as a +1 stealth direct action. This vampire can burn this card as a +1 stealth direct action. Homunculus. It's a retainer that requires Protean. The retainer has 1 life. At inferior, during any Methuselah's unlock phase, the employer can burn 1 blood to unlock. At superior, as above, but the homunculus has 2 lives. Invigorate. It's an action modifier. It requires an Anarch. With Animalism, this Anarch gets +1 strength this action. With Dominate, this Anarch cannot be blocked by allies this action. And with Protean, this Anarch hand strikes are aggravated this action. 3 copies. Library Hunting Ground. Requires Tzimisce and costs 2 pool. Unique location, Hunting Ground. During your unlock phase, a ready vampire you control can gain 1 blood. A vampire can gain blood from only 1 Hunting Ground each turn. Living Mans. It's an equipment that requires Tzimisce and costs 1 blood. It's a location. While in play, this card does not count as equipment. This vampire gets +1 bleed. They can burn this card before range is determined to end combat. A vampire can have only 1 Living Mans. Monstrous Form. It's a card that requires Dominate and Protean. At inferior, only usable before range is determined. This vampire gets +1 strength this combat. A vampire can only have 1 monstrous form, play 1 monstrous form each round. At superior, +1 stealth action. Put this card on this vampire. During combat, you can lock this card to give the vampire +1 strength this round, or 1 maneuver or press. 3 copies. Obedient Flesh. It requires Dominate and Protean and costs 1 blood. With Dominate and Protean and Inferior, +1 stealth. Allies get -1 intercept. At Superior, it's a combat card, only usable before range is determined. This round, this vampire gets +1 strength, 1 optional maneuver, and can prevent 1 damage. A vampire can only play 1 of those cards each round. On the Qui Vive, it's a reaction, only usable by a locked vampire. A minion can play only 1 on the Qui Vive between their unlock phases. This minion wakes. They ignore the requirement to be unlocked for playing reaction cards and attempting to block until the end of the action. If this minion is an ally, they do not unlock as normal during their next unlock phase. 4 copies. 1 with a land. It's a reaction that requires Tzimisce and Protean. Only usable during an action directed at you or a card you control. At Inferior, +2 intercept. At Superior, only usable by a locked vampire. This vampire unlocks and attempts to block. If the block, neither combatant can strike the first round of the resulting combat. 4 copies. Organized Resistance. It's a reaction. Requires a Baron. Usable by a locked Baron. An Anarch you control gets +1 intercept. Also usable to unlock a locked Anarch you control. The Anarch attempts to block with +1 intercept, even if intercept is not yet needed. 3 copies. Papillon. It's a master that requires 3 pull. Unique location. Hunting ground. Requires a ready vampire with a city title. During your unlock phase, a ready titled vampire you control gain 2 blood. A vampire can gain blood from only 1 hunting ground each turn. Piper. It's a master. Requires a ready Anarch. Lock a ready unlocked Anarch you control. That Anarch recruits or employs an ally or retainer from your hand. Requirements and cost apply as normal. This is not an action and cannot be blocked. 2 copies. Revenant. It's a retainer. Requires Tzimisce and costs 1 blood. It's a ghoul with 2 life. The employer gets +1 intercept. 3 copies. Sculpt the Flesh. It's a combat card that requires Tzimisce and Protean. At Inferior, Strike, Hand Strike aggravated. At Superior, as a strike, Hand Strike at +1 damage, and put this card on the opposing minion. During the unlock phase, the attached minion burns 1 blood or life. Minion can burn this card as a +1 stealth action. 4 copies. Underbridge Stray. It's an ally that requires animalism and costs 1 blood. Animal with 1 life, 0 strength, 0 bleed. At basic, this ally can burn 1 life to give a minion you control 1 press. During an action directed at you or a card you control, you can burn this ally if it is not blocking, to unlock a ready minion you control. At Superior, as above, but this ally has 2 life and 1 strength. 2 copies. Boast of Sophia. It's an ally that requires Tzimisce and costs 3 pull. Unique ghoul with 5 life, 3 strength, 0 bleed. After this ally enters play, burn an ally or retainer you control. It can strike 3 ranged damage. It can enter combat with a minion as a direct action, and during your unlock phase, you can discard an ally or retainer card to add 2 life to this ally. War Ghoul. It's an ally. Requires Tzimisce and costs 3 pull. Ghoul with 5 life. 4 strength, 0 bleed. After this ally enters play, burn an ally or retainer you control. It can prevent 1 damage each round of combat. It can enter combat with a vampire as a direct action. It can lock and burn itself to burn a location except during combat. 2 copies. And finally, we find a card with a VTES quick reference of turn sequence, disciplines, clans, titles, and others. At the back, we find a QR where you can access to have tips of how to play this deck. Black Penny Games, official distributor of Vampire the Eternal Struggle, sponsors this unboxing.